Hey everybody, continuing with the CBX engine rebuild. Today we're going to work on the pistons, the rods, and the cams. And we're going to start with the cleanup process. And I'm going to go over taking the pistons off of the rods here. And the pistons are held on by these little wrist pin clips, and they're like little wire clips that hold the wrist pin in. And the easiest way to get those out is you just get a very sharp like screwdriver or whatever, and there's this little reveal here that you can stick it up underneath the wire clip and just pry it out. You have to be careful, otherwise it'll go flying. So you kind of have to hold it in with your finger. You just kind of work it out like so. And then you just grab it once you get it to a point with your hand, and it comes right out. And it's just a little wire clip, as you see. So you have to do both sides. Get it in there and pry up. Again, you have to be careful because it'll go flying and hit somebody in the eye probably. Just grab it, pull it out of there. Then I usually get a little WD-40 and squirt it in there because it might be a little sticky. Some of them are sticky, some of them aren't. This engine, they're probably sticky because it hasn't run for so long. Sometimes you can just pull it, push it out with your finger. And then, like in this case, I'm going to replace the wrist pins anyway and the pistons, so I don't really care about marring them up. So I just grab a pair of needle nose pliers and just pull them right out of there. And that's it. That's all there is to it. So then I take the rod and I remove the caps to get the rod bearings out of there. And to pull the cap off, sometimes it's a little tricky. And as you can see, the markings line up. So you have to make sure that when you put the cap back on, they line up. But you have to kind of rock it back and forth like this. Sometimes it's a little tough to get them off. I just keep rocking it back and forth, pulling hard. You know, it's be easy to get a screwdriver and just pry them, but you don't want to mar them up or anything. So I just kind of work it out like so. It will come off eventually. So then the bearing is stuck in there, and you get the same kind of pointer driver there, and just kind of stick it in a little groove right there, and you just pry it out of there. It'll pop out easily. You just kind of have to pry it. Try to do it without stabbing yourself. And then you can just grab it and pull it right out of there. Pretty easy. They're just pressed in there. And then the same thing on the rod. Stick it in the slot, just kind of pry it out of there. You don't really run a chance of marring up the rod or anything because they come out really easy, so it doesn't take much to get them out of there. And that's it. I'm kind of doing this in real time so you can see, you know, basically how long it takes. As you can see, you just kind of wail through it. And then in this case, the wrist pin or the wrist pin is just coming right out of there easily. And then I always put the caps back on so that they don't get all mixed up. And again, you have to make sure that the markings line up. And you have to get the same cap on the same rod that it came on. You don't want to run the chance of incompatibility. So you want to make sure that the markings line up. Your markings might be different than this. Again, I'm kind of speeding it up right here to kind of go through all of them to get to a point. And that's it. So now to clean up the parts, I use a parts washer, and I use a petroleum-based solvent. And this Agitene right here by Graymills is absolutely the best solvent there is. You can watch 100 different YouTube videos on how to clean up the parts. You know, you can use eco-friendly, you can use water-based, and so on. But when it comes down to it, the petroleum base is the best. You have to wear a mask when you use it because it's toxic. It puts out toxic fumes. So you definitely want to wear a good mask. You want to wear really thick petroleum resistant gloves if you're cleaning a lot of stuff. And the parts washer is really great. It's got a pump in it. There's the Agitene there at the bottom. It's kind of a greenish color. I use this parts cleaning brush that you can get at any auto parts store. And a lot of times I just kind of like, you know, stick it in there and brush it clean. And then I use a couple of, another brush. I use a couple of steel wire brushes. And then I also have a magnet tray so that any of the little nuts and bolts that you're cleaning, you don't lose them into the bottom of the tank, which they're kind of hard to get to then. And then I also ordered this this brush where the solvent flows through it, which is really handy. So I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna clean a couple of parts now, and as you can see there, the solvent flows through the brush, and that's really convenient. It's really easy to clean them and stuff. So, and it's a kind of pretty stiff brush, so I use it for some of the really dirty parts and stuff. So and then I added this magnet light here that I got at Harbor Freight. It's just magnetic. It sticks, you know, you can just place it wherever you want, and it gives you a lot of light so you can see what you're doing. It's got 2 or 3 different settings. It's really great. Real cheap. Runs off batteries, but they'll last for a long time. So now I'm going to get all the parts here. I'm going to get the rods and the cams. And I just start kind of cleaning them like you would dishes in your sink. And it gets all the oil residue off so that it, you know, cleans them up. Now, on the really heavily soiled stuff, I use my other parts washer. And then when I'm done with the cleaning, the small parts, I put it in a bucket of soapy water, and I use Dawn liquid detergent, dishwashing detergent, and let them soak in there. because again, this stuff's kind of toxic. You don't want to hose it off and let it go into the groundwater or whatever. You can rinse it off in your sink, because then it goes to the treatment plant and cleans up the water. It doesn't go into the ocean or into the ground. So it's better to use, the soapy water and then just pour it down the drain when you're done. And here I'm cleaning up the cams, getting them all dried out of the oil residue so I can clean them up. So then what I do is I take it outside and I use the same tub that I tore the engine down in. And again, soapy water with Dawn liquid dishwash detergent. And I use Dawn because I really like the company, because they donate all of their soap to help clean the oil off birds and oil slicks and stuff. So I really support them for that reason. And again, I'm not being paid by them. I just feel like I like to support a company that does unselfish things like that. So anyway, once they're all cleaned up and dried up, then I take the cams, and as you can see, there's probably, in this case, there's some kind of surface rust on them because they'd been sitting for so long. And there's some dried out oil and stuff. And believe it or not, I take a Scotch pad like this, a green one that's not so abrasive to the metal, and I just kind of clean up the lobes and I just clean it up. And some people might cringe at this, but I tell you what, it works like a charm. So I just kind of go through each lobe. One by one. And it cleans them right up, takes all the surface rust off. Now, if the cam is all pitted and scored and everything, then there isn't much you can do. And I've mic'd this cam, all these cams, and they're within tolerance that the shop manual says. So I'm really not worried about, knocking them down or anything. But as you can see there's some kind of, crusted old oil on there and stuff, and you just rub the Scotch-Brite on there, clean it up. Just do it evenly so you're not doing it in one spot all the time. And again, the green Scotch pad is really not that abrasive. It's really more for painting and stuff. So it's not going to etch the metal or anything like that. It just cleans up whatever residue is on there that's caked on there. And as you can see, they came out looking nice. Beautiful. It's hard to believe the cams are as in good a shape as they are, considering that this bike sat out for so long and had so much crud inside the engine. But it's really coming clean. And again, I've mic'd these cams, so they're all within tolerance, so I'm just going to reuse them. They really don't have that many miles on them anyway. And again, I'm doing this in real time to show you that it really doesn't take very long to clean them up and make them look nice. You want to make them as slick as possible so that when the engine's back together again, they're just polished and slick and so on. That you want to reduce as much friction as possible. I had done this cam prior to doing the videos, so it's pretty nice. I'm just kind of going over it one more time. And in a minute, what I do is I actually use a polishing. See, now here's an example. See, you got a little bit of surface rust right there on the tops of the lobes, and the Scotch-Brite will take that right off of there, and you don't want to build the engine back with that surface rust on there. Again, it'll create friction. See, came right off, no problem, clean as a whistle. You want to make it as shiny and clean as possible. Anyway, as I was saying, in a minute I'll take these cams and I get a polishing wheel, and I polish all the lobes again to get all of the scratch marks off from the Scotch-Brite, and it makes them, you want to get them as polished and chrome-like as possible to reduce the friction. You want to clean all the journal surfaces as well, because that's where all the friction is. Again, I'm doing this in real time so you can see. It just really doesn't take very long. And it's good exercise for your hands and wrists. Some of the harder pieces you have to just kind of really scrub at it. Again, you really are not going to knock any of the metal down. It's just getting a little bit of hardened rust off of there. Again, I'm really surprised that these cams are as in good a condition as they are, considering how much water had gotten inside that engine and all the other crap that was in there. I really had fully intended in having to put new cams in here, but these really cleaned up well. Typical Honda quality. And again, you know, sorry about the time, but I'm doing this in real time on purpose so that you can see what it takes to do it. You always kind of want to make sure the ends don't have any corrosion on them as well. In this case, this cam right here does have a little bit of corrosion on the end. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got some surface rust on it. And again, you want to get rid of as much of that as possible. And I'm pretty sure it's just surface rust that'll come right off. You just want to reduce the amount of friction as much as possible. It's coming clean. Most of it's coming off. Again, the journals are really important to get those clean. So then I take a wire brush and I just, again, clean the surface up. Then I take the rods and I also wire brush the just make sure there isn't any surface rust or any corrosion or any dried up oil or anything, and especially on the sides of the rods like I'm doing here, because again they kind of rub next to each other and you want to reduce the friction. Then I take assembly lube like this Bel-Ray. There's all kinds of different ones. But again, this is a petroleum-based kind of a pasty, like toothpaste, and it's oil soluble. So when the when it's inside the engine, the oil will break it down, and it just turns into oil itself. So, and the nice thing about the assembly lube is that you have full full lubrication at the first start of the engine. So I always take a little bit of assembly lube and I kind of lube up the wrist pins so that they're easily placed back into the piston. So then I just kind of stick it in there until it's just right there at the edge of the hole, and then you put the rod in and just slide it right in. And again, the assembly lube makes it a lot easier. It just slips right in. So then when you have to put the clips back in, again, you make sure that you have a nice floating, everything, nothing's binding up. So then I take the wire clip, just kind of get it started in there, and then grab your needle nose pliers and bring it the rest of the way in. Now the one thing you want to make sure is that you want to have the gap towards the top of the piston. So you just kind of rotate it around until the gap is at the top of the piston. And I'm trying to show it here, but I don't think you can see it. But the gap of the C-clip is at the top of the piston. Then you want to make sure that the wrist pin is all the way in there so that the groove is available, and you put the other clip in. Just kind of have to grab it by the open end there so you can bend it in. Be careful not to slip and scratch the side of the piston. Again, you want to make it as smooth as, you want to keep it as smooth as possible. These clips are pretty easy because of the way they're designed. You just kind of bend them and they just slip right in and snap right in place. And again, you want to make sure the gap is at the top of the piston, so you just kind of grab it and rotate it around. If it turns freely, like this one is, then you know you're back in the groove. If it binds up, then you know you're not inside the groove, and you need to keep doing it, because the last thing you want is for one of these clips to fall out while it's in the engine. Which is why I always put the gap at the top. Again, I'm going to get a light here so you can maybe see, but you really can't see it. So anyway, again, the gap at the top, very important. So that's it. And again, you want to make sure everything is loose. It slides freely. There's no binding. And that's it. So then, like I mentioned before, I take the cams and I get a polishing wheel with the you know, your typical polishing cake, and I polish all the lobes and the journals and everything, and I get them as shiny and smooth as possible. Just keep thinking friction. You want to reduce the friction as much as possible. So I get them as shiny and chrome-like as possible. These polishing wheels are invaluable to have, and they're pretty cheap at Harbor Freight. This one came from Harbor Freight. It was like 75 bucks or something. So now I only did these two, the first lobe and the first journal there. And you can see they're beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So I'll be doing this to all the rest of the cams, and then they're ready to put back in the head. And I'll be doing that on the next video after this. Just to kind of show you the difference. I mean, you can see how much shinier it is after you polish them up, and how much smoother they are. So that's it. I will continue putting the pistons and polishing up these cams, and then, like I said, in the next video I'll be putting the cams, well, really can't put them back in the head until we're ready to put the head back on the engine, but you know, at least we will be able to start moving forward to try to get the engine back together again. There's the one that I polished. You can see how much nicer it looks. So that's it for this video. The next one I will be cleaning up the engine cases and the blocks, and that's it. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe and share and like and all that good stuff, and hit the bell so that you get notified when I list another video. So again, thanks for watching.